I'm Philip Chuquette. Thank you all for coming out to the January meeting of the Project Delivery Advisory Panel. We're fortunate to have Secretary Lane and Commissioner Kilpatrick here with us today. But before we get started, we'll do our usual. If anyone needs a break, it's out the door to the right, and there are rest facilities down the hall. If we have to vacate this space for any reason, it's down the steps. We go back out the front door to the left, down the street, and rally around in the parking lot with the rest of the folks from the Research Council. Charlie, we haven't had to do that yet in the last couple of years, but we're always staying on our toes for it. Before we get started with the agenda, let's do a quick round of introductions from the panel and the technical team, and then we'll get to the commissioner and the secretary. Chip.
Chip Boyles with Thomas Jefferson Planning District and Charlottesville Albemarle MPO.
Morgan Butler with the Southern Environmental Law Center.
Mark Graham, Albemarle County.
Brad Sheffield, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors.
Chris Engel, City of Charlottesville.
Allison DeTones, CTV.
Joel DiMenzio, VDOT Charlottesville Residency.
Dave Covington, VDOT Charlottesville Residency.
Debbie Messina, Phillips Chicago Company.
Linda Keller, VDOT IT Support.
Chuck Proctor, Culpeper District Planning.
Al Jones, VDOT Charlottesville Residency.
John Lynch, VDOT Culpeper.
And our emeritus technical member team.
Chris Powers Consultants.
I saw a couple of other, Pete, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Pete Forces, CMA Properties.
I saw a couple other VDOTers walk in the back, and I think they should stand up and let folks know who they are. These are two important fellows.
Garrett Moore, Chief Engineer of VDOT. Quentin Elliott, Deputy Commissioner of VDOT.
Quentin had the original assignment from the commissioner and secretary to put together the very first panel and get the ball rolling. And Garrett Moore, the chief engineer, still wants to know why we didn't finish in 40 days instead of 57. Now, look, I know your all's time is short, so I had Charlie, if you want to do your thing first, and then we'll hear from the secretary.
Absolutely. I've been anxious to be able to do this, what we're going to do here in a minute, for a good while now. And the opening of the grade separated interchange was, it was months ago now, back in early August.
Oh, no.
No, I'm sorry. It was July, wasn't it? Yeah. The party was in August. That's right. That's what it was. But Garrett and I talked this morning, the chief engineer. We talked about this project 3 years ago, the beginning of the McAuliffe administration. This project really didn't exist. The grade separation especially. The project didn't exist. And in 3 years, we've gone from no project to it being completed and open to traffic. And in July, almost exactly 3 years from when we started, you're going to be opening the entire project to traffic, including Berkmar, including the widening up to the airport. If you think about how much progress we've made in such a short period of time, it really is amazing. And the community effort, the work of this group, addressing issues, raising issues, and addressing issues through the project, I think it's just really been tremendous. But today I'm here, it's a simple assignment to pay up on a promise and a commitment that we made in the contract. And the contract required a 103-day, it gave a 103-day window to shut down the intersection of Rio and 29 to build this grade separation. Real strict limitations in terms of when it could be done at time of day and time of year, avoiding the student traffic at UVA and also regular school traffic in Albemarle County. They didn't do it in 103 days. They did it in 57 days. And that truly is something. The Secretary talks about, people said it couldn't be done in 103 days, couldn't be done. And they're right. We did it in 57. And it was because of the great work of the design build team. And I'm going to recognize some of those folks here, as well as the VDOT and our consultants on the ground getting it done. But it's also the broader community and the acceptance of the broader community working with us as we manage that traffic and got this done. This is, we do some pretty complex technical projects in Virginia. We build underwater tunnels, we build mountain tunnels, we build the Springfield Interchange, we build 495 express lanes. We do complex projects, but this one ranks right up there with them because of the constraints of the available land and the traffic and the limiting the impact to businesses while we were doing it. This is one of the most technical projects that we have done and done very well. And so with that, again, the promise, the commitment in the contract, built into this contract, incentivizing performance and early completion and innovation were so important to us in this design build project that we put a large incentive towards completing this work ahead of schedule and minimizing the impact. And the Lane Corman team did exactly that. They did everything we asked and more in terms of delivering this. So I have today a check for $7,335,497 for the Lane Corman team to accept. And I've got here today, I've got Ryan Gorman and Jason Tracy from Lane Corman. If you guys come on up. And I got Owen Perry and Gary Johnson from RK&K. And then I'd ask for the chief engineer and the deputy and the secretary and the VDOT folks that on this team to come up, and we're going to take a picture, and I'm going to give these guys a check for $7 million and some change. And again, well deserved by the team. It's not done yet.
I don't know how y'all split it up, but that'll be up to you guys.
Yes, if you deposit it at the
come on down to credit union.
University of Virginia Credit Union. All right, so guys, it's yours.
Pretty good stuff, man.
Here's John.
Very good.
Where are we going after this? Some of them is on the check.
They're buying.
King family.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Great achievement. Thank you, Tom. I wouldn't have said that either. Good job, Charles.
It's another story, but I got $100 out of that check from Owen Perry. Hey, Owen. I said it's a long story, but I got $100 of that. Little traffic engineering side bet. Charlie, you good? Thank you for coming and recognizing these folks. They did what they were asked to do and then some. And it's good to see you and Garrett and Quentin come out and recognize them publicly. Aubrey, I know you have some stuff you want to talk about.
Just a couple minutes. I would think we ought to give a round of applause to VDOT and this team for what they did. This project set a lot of firsts for not only VDOT, but for the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Charlie mentioned about the incentives. We've gone to using those in many places because one of the things we weren't taking into account was the cost on the community. And the quicker we get it out, the cheaper it is, not only for the community, but for all of us working together. And quite frankly, when you have incentives, you don't have any claims either. So it's been a great team effort, making sure we're working through and getting this through. And I, again, want to appreciate all the hard work VDOT and Lane Corman did. But it really started with this panel. I got a few notes. I want to make sure I get everything I want to say in. But what this panel has accomplished in the last 3 years and what built has been more than the last 30 years on this project. Think about that. We also came into office, wasn't a project. We didn't know we had anything. And we're starting from there, we are where we are today. And the solutions that were come up with were a part of everybody in this room. And I certainly appreciate the debate and the difficult discussions that went on in here, because I know everybody didn't agree. But I do know that didn't agree, they still hung in there and pulled together, and we put this to make it better for the traveling public in the area. So at the first meeting, I asked you to advise VDOT during this entire development, and this is also something we're also doing on other projects. In fact, once we start construction, that's when the real negotiations begin to make sure we get this done. And so your deliberations and recommendations contributed greatly to the project, and there's a whole list of them here. I'll just name a few. Accelerating the deadline for completing the Best Buy project ramp, adding contract modifications to limit and restrict lane closures during the time it was going on, ensuring the business's interests remained open during business hours, preparing videos and getting around maps to everybody so they know what was going on, adding aesthetic treatments to the projects that weren't contemplated before, revising the scope of work to include pedestrian and bike facilities. I mean, these are real substantive issues that took place after VDOT decided to move forward with the construction. Adding funding for your direct participation in the steering committee for the business assistance program. That was an idea that came out of here. And the signalization, pedestrian crossings that go on in here with this project, all of those germinated with this group. So I want to sincerely thank you, even if you did not agree exactly what was going on. Hello, Kristen, how are you? You stuck in there and you helped pull this off. And I've always said it may not be the solution, it's part of the solution. And I appreciate all your hard work that you've done to help us get to where we are today. But from that is also germinated something else, and that is the fact that you guys want to keep going. I guess you're gluttons for punishment in there. But, and that is that I'm pleased to announce that at your request and the MPO, we're kicking off a study of Hydraulic Road and the Route 29 intersection, which is, I believe, would be another key component of making movement in and around the 29 area in Charlottesville very important. The study will be constrained to a geographical area in and around the Hydraulic Road and Route 29 intersection, but will also include the area around the proposed Hillside South connector to Route 250. The plan will be conducted in 2 phases, with guidance and input from this advisory panel, just as we collaborated on the advisory panel over the last 2.5 years. The first phase of work in hydraulic will focus on land use planning to be sure that we are offering transportation improvements with your consideration and support of the city and the county that we identify as desirable land uses in the hydraulic Route 29 areas. A consultant will be engaged by VDOT, but this is critical, I think, to the success, but managed by the MPO to assure that land use phases concentrates on goals established by the city and the county. One of the things we've worked very hard on a lot of reforms in the Commonwealth, but we think the best results come from the local levels up. You guys know what you need more. Our job at the Transportation Board is to take those ideas, meld them into regional solutions that help our entire state. It's important to emphasize that the land use decisions, again, will be made with the county and the MPO. I want to make sure that you understand this is nothing dictated. There is nothing out there right now that says this is the way it's going to be. There's no preconceived solutions or assumptions here. We're kicking off this process at your request, the MPO's request, and the outcomes will be based on your input. Now, I've asked the executive director of the MPO to work with the city and county to suggest community and business leaders who may be supplemented on this panel. And I expect this panel to be formed sometime during February and the new panel to begin in March. And I've also suggested that the planning uses be completed within 6 months. Now, I know that was controversial when you started this one. We've been arguing about 30 years, but quite frankly, there's really nothing in here good people of conscience can't come together on. You may not agree, but we can come together to move things forward. So I am really excited to be able to announce this today. We announced yesterday the scores on Smart Scale. That'll be the recommended scoring across the Commonwealth, our second time. We also announced, the Commissioner did yesterday, another way where citizens can track the movements of those projects, not just what they cost, but their status is going forward. So transparency and accountability, and in fact, you're live streaming these meetings. I live stream now every meeting I do. And I've found that that has really been helpful for us in moving these projects forward. Citizen engagement is extremely important. I want to thank Allison DeTunk on the Commonwealth Transportation Board because we have substantially changed the way we deliver projects in the Commonwealth, and a lot of those ideas germinated with this panel. That is the continuation through construction, that is using your ideas to supplement, and the embracement by the community. So I just want to, again, thank you very much. Mr. Suquette, thank you again, as always, for, Joy and I get to come up here. You've been taking most of the arrows for us, and so we appreciate that, and all the team that's assisted here. But I will tell you that this project is well known throughout the state. The way we've developed it and done it, and even some of the fiercest critics still believe there ought to be other things done, but have called me to say they appreciate how this project was put together. So thank you very much for having us, and I look forward to working more with the area. I know, John, you got some projects that look like they're going to be approved in addition to what you're doing. I know you're doing something in Warrenton. It's coming close to fruition. So a lot of good things going on in the state, and I just want to thank you very much for having us up here today.
You have time for a question or two?
Sure, a few questions, sure, yeah. Got a few minutes before we have to leave, so audience or panel members, happy to answer anything you want to talk about. Yes, ma'am. Jane, how are you?
Very well, sir. I would just like to let us know when you're ready for the party, and we will do the work to make it happen.
That would be great. I do think you have something to celebrate up here. And I want to emphasize, though, that does not mean that our work is done.
Sure.
It means that we take this and we build on it. Yes, ma'am. Hey, Kristen.
And mine is also kind of a comment as much as a question, but I think, one of the things that we've seen in this process is that part of the success, I think, and the positive nature of this project has been this panel and the way that we've included the public and lots of ways to come in. But another really key piece is that it was adequately funded. And I think that we need to talk about that constantly at the state level, that you only get this kind of success when you put the money in to make it happen.
Well, that is a key component of Smart Scale.
Yep.
We now only fully fund projects. No more moving monies around. We used to have an allocation process. Now we have an outcome-based bringing projects to fruition. Brings certainty not only to the people working on it, it brings certainty to VDOT. They know, Charlie can tell you pretty much for the next 6 years what his work schedule is now. He couldn't say that 3 years ago.
Except for snowstorm.
Except for snowstorm, that's right, Seth. But I mean, in terms of his construction, think of the efficiencies it brings to his team. John knows what he's going to be working on, building that. The contractors that work out here, you can plan your schedule, knowing VDOT's going to have work.
And the public.
The public knows what's coming, and that's why we wanted to do the dashboard and the Smart Scale where you can track them as they're going out there. So I had a chance this morning to speak to this House Transportation Subcommittee, and then yesterday House Appropriations about this. And many of the things, the scoring gets all the media attention up front because it has to work or nothing else comes from it. But the real policies behind it, which you've mentioned, Kristen, one, fully funding projects, the certainty, knowing that you're now solving a problem and the least expensively you can do, the better it scores, the efficiencies that's bringing into it. The ability for, again, not just VDOT, but the workforce around the state, the certainty that you know at the MPO level. Those are things that you were just starting to see. And the CTB was debating some of these points yesterday. In fact, the CTB says, well, gosh, what are we going to do now? Well, here's my answer to that. You never know what the view is on the ladder until you get to the next step. And I think this opens up a lot of doors because really what we ought to do is, what we're doing moving the needle. Are we really making people's lives better? Are we really reducing congestion? That's the type of stuff that CTB ought to do. Charlie's going to deliver all the projects, and we need to make sure what we're asking him to deliver is really what's moving the needle. So thank you, Kristen, for that. But
and my apologies for my tardiness. I got stuck behind a truck that decided to unload in the middle of the street.
That's intentionally or unintentionally?
I don't know.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, yes, Morgan.
Commissioner Kilpatrick mentioned the innovation and upon the innovation that Lane Coleman brought to the project, and I think very much agree with that. I think it's an important point, but I just want to mention the innovation that VDOT employed by creating this panel and just I think the success that brought to the project, the fact that we had input before the ink was dry on the designs and the construction plans, and we're able to add our 2 cents to try to improve those along the way. I hope it's a process that you all will consider including elsewhere throughout the state on other projects, particularly the controversial ones where there are a lot of different...
I mean, like Interstate 66, which is, yes, that is exactly what we're doing up there.
Absolutely candidates, but it's been, I think, a very successful process, as you pointed out, and I just want to thank you all for going through it.
Well, Morgan, the Cedar Creek project, we awarded it yesterday. This is a project over 81 near Strasburg, 81 and 66, and it started out, it's a 4-lane section of Route 11. We were going to replace one bridge because it was deficient. After a lot of work with the historic groups in the area, battlefield groups, and our folks, we made a decision that, well, we didn't really need a 4-lane road. We just needed a good 2-lane road. We changed the bridges we were replacing. We're abandoning a stretch of Route 11 that we don't need, and it's preserving a stretch of battlefield. But that was because of the interaction you're talking about. And yet to answer, yes, you are going to see that more on the controversial projects, but even on the hometown projects, to the extent that we can involve the community and the stakeholders in the development of projects, the better off we are. It is a challenge sometimes to get people involved, but I think this has been a good example of getting good community involvement on a project. And that is our challenge, and for us to continue to drive ways to get community involvement in our project development.
So as you can see, the Commissioner has embraced these reforms, which is going to, I think, key to the success. And so VDOT's having to change, and I think they're changing for the better, and led by Mr. Kilpatrick here. So, and Chief Engineer, and maybe the Deputy Secretary. I mean, it's back there, but anyway, so.
Anything else?
Well, I guess I'm part of the people that you mentioned, the other people. I have to say that the speed and professionalism of Lane Corman and the VDOT team that worked with them is impressive. I mean, I've been involved in construction for many decades, and it's really amazing how good a job they did. I mean, there's no question about it. So I'm totally happy about that. When it comes to ladders and looking one step at a time, I'm a little bit too linear for that. So I like to look at the whole ladder, where it is, where it's going, and what is it resting on. And I'd like to remind everybody, probably have said this a few times before, if you take a map of the United States and you put a straight edge to it between New York and Atlanta, it goes through Charlottesville. A straight pencil line. If you look at the railroad line between New York and Atlanta, it goes through Charlottesville. If somebody had figured out how to put Interstate 83 to continue south, it would have run parallel to 29. Or if somebody would have figured out how to run 85 straight up north rather than taking a dogleg in North Carolina, it would have been parallel to 29. So being a little bit linear and liking to think long term, even although my term is not that long anymore, I still think that somebody got to figure out how Interstate 83 is going to parallel 29 someday.
I tend to agree with you that our country needs to come to grips with how we're going to fund these.
Well, and there's a new president in town, which
without
making any comments.
I understand,
but he's talking about infrastructure.
And he is, and I have had a chance to read his plan, and a lot of it is built around public-private investment, which I'm not against, but I don't think the world wants everything told. So I could not agree more, and in fact, what we're using our resources on, and I had a chance to talk with his team, we've got a big hole. We really are just funding immediate needs. It would be great that we could look at the future, but for the foreseeable future, we're dealing with immediate needs. But Henry, I couldn't agree with you more, and I want to thank you personally for your participation. And that's Okay. All right. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much for having Charlie and I up. I'm sorry to run, but unfortunately, there's 140 of uninvited guests in the legislature back there, and I guess they would say they're invited. But anyway, we've got a lot going on, but I did want to take time out to say thank you very much.
Thanks for coming by.
Sincerely meant both from myself, the legislature knows I'm up here, and the governor knows I'm up here. So thank you very much for
Charlie,
all that you've done. Yep. Thank you very much.
Have a good trip back.
Charlie's driving, so it's good to take.
Well, you're good. You're good.
Thanks very much.
All right, we will keep going on here. Last meeting, if you recall, this is our first monthly meeting instead of bi-weekly. The number of viewers and streams and average minutes per stream are all right around the same, so no real surprises there. The inbox since the last meeting had 12 emails and phone calls. There was a question about signal timing at Route 29 at Timberwood and Hollymead, and those signals will be adjusted and the final timings made at the end of construction, which is 6 months away here. One compliment on the RIO GSI project. One compliment about a blind spot at Ashwood, and the design team went back and took a look at that. This is on the new northbound lane. And all of the sight distances there meet or exceed design requirements, so there's nothing we could see here from a design point of view just from that single comment. One asked about where the crosswalks would be on Route 29. And as you all know, there's a crosswalk in North Hollymead. It will connect the sidewalk on the west side to the shared use path on the east side. We got one real nice note focusing on just thanking the contractor and the work that Lou and Chris Reed did on communication. So that was a nice note. One asked about whether or not Rio Mills Road was going to be paved and whether or not there's going to be access from Rio Mills to Berkmar. There's no current plans to pave Rio Mills, I don't think. But one of those projects that scored well, I think I just saw this yesterday, was a connection from connecting Rio Mills to Berkmar. I'm not sure when all that final work is done, but that scored well, and the CTB will have that under consideration. I think one of the things that it scored well in had to do with the fact that it could help pull some traffic off of Route 29. One asked when the Berkmar extension will be open. As we talked last time, that Lane Corman's officially re-baselined their schedule now to finish that before the end of June or in July. One made a comment about the signal not changing frequently enough at Ashwood. The field folks checked that out, and that signal is functioning as it should. This next one really had to do with about Route 29, about the opening in the sound wall, Joel. Was focused on some trespassing. I think there's a chain across that opening now so you can get to the maintenance road, but there's some issues there that I think Lou may have sent over to you to check into about some possible trespassing and camping out there a little bit. One was looking for some additional stone on a driveway up at Ridgewood Apartments, and that stone was added and graded out. In advance of the stop signs that are up now during construction, somebody suggested adding a sign saying three-way stop on each one of those legs in front of the stop signs, and the I guess the team doesn't feel like that's necessary. And here, in a few months, all those stop signs that whole intersection will change and the roundabout will be in place. There was one comment again about pavement markings on southbound at Ryle Road, and I think we've looked at those, continued to look at those things monthly, and still aren't making any recommendations to change the pavement markings.
Is that the same issue that Morgan's been talking about with to be able to see where the curbs are?
No, these are the tracks from the pavement mark.
So it's like to know what lane to be in? Okay.
And I think it's where the puppy tracks from across the Rio overpass meet up with the lane markings southbound.
It's the best that I can decipher from that comment.
Yeah.
It wasn't very specific.
I think it's southbound 29 to Rio East, right? That turn.
I think they were talking about through the intersection because.
Yeah, Rio West to 29 South.
I was thinking southbound on 29.
Southbound on 29, but those were the puppy tracks.
Yeah, because there is a curve there.
Yeah, yeah.
So we extended those.
We've revised them once. We revised those pavement markings once. And
is that really the technical term?
the puppy tracks, I think it is, isn't it?
It's kind of cute.
They're slightly less technical.
It's a sub-level technical term. It's interesting that we got this comment about the mast arm. Now, that mast arm, there was a mast arm out there that had a pretty good little gallop in it, and put some dampers on that back in the fall. There's very little movement in that mast arm now, but you're going to see some movement. If it was completely rigid, that's a bad thing. So I don't think there's any additional work we need to do out on.
What we've seen as a result of this complaint and that day and some subsequent days is the movement we see now is within the tolerance that's allowable by federal and state regulations.
Diane, I actually think it was somebody called that to your attention several months ago, and the mast arm was indeed a little bit more active than it needed to be. Yeah.
I saw it, yeah.
And then it was outside of the tolerance.
Right, right. Nothing new on the website as far as that posting area. The project hotline got some calls, mostly dealing with property managers at different homeowner or townhome associations, just wanting to know, hey, what's the schedule coming up for the next couple of months. Chris Reed talked to all of those folks, and one had a question about temporary access and gravel on entrances during construction, and I don't remember the specifics of each one of those, but I know Chris took care of that with the Lane Corman folks. And that's a wrap up on that. There was no new items here to cover, although during the Hillsdale update, we will touch on the incentive that I think Henry, you brought that up initially, and we did pull together some state funds for an incentive to include into that contract. Oh, you did change it, sorry. Any thoughts or ideas for February? Henry?
Nothing that I can think of. Okay. Other stuff that you don't want to hear.
Okay. We'll go to Chris. Right?
Good.
Kristen?
I'd like to get maybe a little more detail on kind of how we're going to move forward with the study area.
On,
hydraulic and 29.
yeah, I'll round that out a little
Okay,
bit
because we've gotten
more.
some information at City Hall, but it would just be really nice to kind of do that in the context of this room.
Yeah, okay. You want to try to work that in today, or?
Well, I mean, unless you have something that
Well,
you already have.
What the secretary said about doing it in 2 phases is partly in response to what we heard and learned from this process, that, hey, there was supposed to be this small area plan, and you guys got out ahead of that. Well, yeah. So now, at the request of that came from the MPO, the secretary moved up. There was $1 million available in this fiscal year, and $1 million was moved up into next fiscal year for a planning and transportation planning and engineering study. So there's going to be a new panel formed to focus on that effort. The first phase of that study or that work will be the small area plan or the land use planning piece. And a consultant will come on board through a VDOT open-end contract, but because it's this land use planning piece, it's going to be managed by the MPO.
But what I heard the secretary saying was that what I thought he meant was adding to this panel. So he's talking about a whole separate panel.
A separate panel that of 10 to 12 folks. So the land use piece will be the focus of phase 1. But about halfway through that, VDOT will bring on another consultant that will focus more on specific transportation solutions to support what comes out of the land use study. And then, if the city and if the county and the MPO want to move a project forward out of that work, the second consultant would help develop the transportation engineering elements necessary for a smart scale application that would be submitted in September of 2018. So if the city and if the county and MPO want to move a project forward, the assistants would be there to help prepare a smart scale application. Then it would have to be scored, and then depending on how it's scored, it would come to the CTB to fund or not fund a series of projects. So a bit different than the current Route 29 program, where, okay, we're not going to do a bypass. We have a couple of $100 million. If you guys can figure out something to do, we'll fund it. This is different, and the decision was made after the request came through the MPO. Well, look, we know that conducting this small area plan was an issue at RIO, so let's just fold that into the work.
So will this body get updates about that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys have worked hard for a couple of years. We've got 5 more meetings, maybe, of this group before Jason doesn't give us anything to talk about anymore. We'll have Hillsdale continuing, so we can update this group, and then however this next panel gets formed, we'll make sure that the communication stays between the two. There may be some overlap. Some of you may be ready to do something else, but there again, we've asked the MPO to work with the county and the city to recommend some names rather than us kind of looking at a list of people and saying, well, this 10 or 12 sound good.
That's helpful.
So that's the way it will work.
Can I just add
Yes.
something to that? And I think it's important to mention the formation of this panel was very positive in its original state. It was pretty balanced between government and
Yes.
private individuals, businesses, and that sort of thing, landowners. That kind of dissipated over time, and the balance is now way off. I think it's been very positive, don't get me wrong, but I hope that sense, that focus, can be the same going into this next panel.
I think that's very
critically
important. I think it's very important.
That being said, I'm not going to be there.
Yeah. But I think I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. This one did become unbalanced because, well, you know, it became unbalanced. But I think it's very important, Pete. I think it's very important.
So,
And I've expressed that to, I mean, Chip and I have talked about the same thing, and you know, it can't be. If it's 12 people that all think alike, you might as well not do any of it. So, yeah. So that's kind of the game plan there, Kristen. And we would hope to get some recommendations and names in February in time to reach out to folks, put a panel together, and have a first meeting in March. And maybe we figure out a co-first meeting or something. I don't know. We'll figure that out. We'll figure that out. Mark?
Nothing.
Morgan?
Two quick thoughts. For our next meeting, it would be helpful if we could get even just a quick update on the additional train set, that component of the Route 29 Solutions, and just what the latest is there. And then my second point, and this may be really more of a comment for the county, but with the anticipated completion date of Berkmar moving up, just sort of start thinking about how things will develop once that project's complete, and just want to make sure that we're giving thought to access management on Berkmar Drive Extended. I think it could be a big mistake if we allow Berkmar to develop much the same way that portions of Route 29 have, where there are numerous entrances and they're not spaced very well apart, and it really eat into the capacity that Berkmar offers as an improvement. So I just want to make sure that, if not this panel, that someone's giving some thought as to whether an access management plan for Berkmar might be appropriate, or just what we want to do in terms of access on the new road.
Okay.
We're talking about things like controlled access, limited access,
Well, not,
rather than
it's more,
every lot gets a driveway.
I'm actually talking more about the latter. I mean, making sure that there's some kind of organized thought put into what's going to be the most efficient way to have entrances along.
Some sort of controlled access plan is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's worth considering whether that's something to try to put in place.
I've been wondering about that all along. Mark may know something about that.
I was going to
But the
say,
county doesn't.
I'm not sure it's a bad idea. VDOT does have an access.
I mean, I just want to say, there's an
policy
access management policy in place.
And it might be good to review that against Berkmar so people understand how it will be done. And if we're looking for something different from that road.
So you say there is a plan.
There is a policy. VDOT has
There's
a statewide access management.
Yeah, there's a statewide access management policy that grew out of a legal requirement, right? A law that required an access management policy
That's
procedure to be put in place.
It does discuss the ability of localities to come up with their own access management.
Yeah, right.
And it's just something.
There have been other projects in the state on corridors where a locality has come to the CTB with a recommendation for an access management plan, either coincident with or shortly after the construction of new facilities. I don't know if that's happened recently, but I know that's, other localities have put those kind of plans in place.
Yeah, I just think it's.
But we could review, as Mark said, the access management policy as it pertains to Berkmar. That might be a good first step.
Right.
I will add that somewhat associated with it, related, I've talked to some people in VDOT already about this. I have a short-term concern related to this, and that we're effectively going to have a road that has a 2-mile stretch with no entrances on it. I can't think of a place outside of the interstate where we have that, and what is that going, how is that going to actually function and operate? That's going to be an interesting question.
People
Right now, it's
recklessly?
People will drive as fast as they think they can safely drive on a road.
Yeah.
And if
Whatever
there's
speed
no-
limit you put on it, hopefully they don't exceed it by too much. Yet, in a way, it's not too different from the John Warner Parkway, which is also 2 lanes. It has a fairly long stretch, not that long, but fairly long. But then the question comes in, where will there be driveways, and it has to do with the zoning. There's some of it is zoned rural, and I'm not so sure if there wasn't 1 or 2 driveways on it when we walked it, isn't it? Or
We have
maybe there were
a
10
access for crossing at the Mooney's property.
Yeah.
Okay.
In order to, specifically for farm equipment access across the road.
That's the one I remember. Yeah.
Well, I think the idea to review the facility with respect to the current access management policy is a good idea. Because I think here in our role, we can review the transportation planning part of it. And I think you're exactly right. Going beyond that are issues for the county to consider. Okay. Jim, Pete?
So I have the note, just to follow up on the Berkmar Drive access thing. Came up earlier that Rio Mills may tie in, so that would lead itself well to the conversation of access management. That's the first tie-in that wasn't already planned, I think, and could put some traffic on and off of Berkmar between the two terminals. The other thing that I've mentioned several times over the last year is the Rio Mills connection, which is now a construction staging area at the bottom underneath the bridge. Such a great, I'm just going to say it for the record, and you guys do with it if you want, but it's such a great opportunity for the county for a recreational opportunity to access the river. I still say, I know you guys have some DEQ issues to work out. I still say that could be developed into something low impact with what's there to get some people to the river for recreational purposes.
And I'll just say that is underway.
Okay.
We're working with Game and Inland Fisheries and others right now.
I just took the opportunity with the board here
Trying to figure out a way to
to
make
go on
it
record
work.
with it, but
We're in total agreement. So.
Did we figure out the permitting part of that, or this is something?
Yes, Game and Inland Fisheries is working with us, trying to help.
Okay,
with that part of
okay.
the equation.
Okay.
Yes. It's in place, or it's underway. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say it's in place, but it's underway.
Okay. Okay. I will make a note to keep that on the radar.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Some progress over the last month at 29 widening. The water line relocation's up to about 50% complete. The phase 4 grading and paving is moved up to 40%, 6 and 7 up to from 30 to 35%. So everything looking in order there. We really didn't have any activities closing out in January. Berkmar, not a lot on the south of the river over the last month in terms of the roadway construction, but those are up to 85 and 90% complete. The parapets, abutment slabs, railings up around 20%. On Hillsdale, some movement on grading at North Greenbrier Drive. bridge substructure up to 90% complete, retaining wall at Pepsi, 40%, some paving between Greenbrier and Seminole, 40%, and then the paving at Seminole Court. It's got a little movement there, and Dave and Jeanette will talk more about the progress on these projects as they do the updates. But, you know, we mentioned this last time. The completion of Berkmar and Route 29 has been moved up to the end of June, and still October 30th for Hillsdale. So that looks pretty much in order to me. Any questions about this? Okay, Dave, why don't you? And we took Rye off here, but if you have any pertinent updates on Rye.
I have no pertinent updates on it.
Okay.
Thank you for taking
I
that.
have a quick question.
Yes,
Just one of the projects that's not on the grid is the signalization. And so since the completion date is being moved up, is that going to move up that as well?
Dave is talking to the traffic operations folks about that, because we brought that same issue up.
So we'll know at the next meeting.
The short answer we've gotten so far is yes, it's possible.
Okay.
So I think Joel and I, we were talking about it earlier, we're supposed to meet with the Traffic Operations Center folks to talk about.
Because what I'd like to see is, yeah, okay, it's possible. Now let's see a plan for how it's going to get done.
Yeah, the biggest thing is procurement of the equipment right now. Everything else is already in place. Okay, I guess I get to follow the commissioner and.
You notice did you see all the VDOT guys dressed up today? Except me and Hal.
Boss is here.
Thanks for pointing that out. But just to go through some of the things that are going on, it's been a month since we met last, and yeah, it's been over the holidays, but there has been work going on. There continues to be work going on. Fortunately, we've got pretty good weather right now, a little bit of rain, but temperatures are good. So we continue to work on erosion control and maintenance of what's in place now. With all the rain we've been having, we fortunately haven't had any issues with that. Excavation at the Ridgewood Hotel in Reuben Lane along the northbound lanes there. That's a tricky area because we have to maintain access to all the residents in those locations, so that's been going on. Ditch grading and stabilization throughout the project, mostly on the northbound lane side, stone grading for the northbound lanes, as well as the shared use path. And we'll see some pictures here in a little bit that'll give you an idea where this is occurring. Drainage installation on Pond 3. A lot of these ponds are really starting to shape up. You're able to drive up the alignment, and if you happen to look over there, see them. Pond 3 is the really large one that's near Ashwood Boulevard that's going in now. In fact, yesterday we were out there and they hit rock, of course, or start to hit a lot of rock in those locations, so they were getting through that rock. Guardrail removal. This is old guardrail that isn't needed based on the new design. Generally, we're shifting the roadway to the west a little bit. The steep slopes on the east side of the road are now out of the clear zone area, so we can remove that old guardrail. Landscaping may begin toward the today or tomorrow. They weren't out today, were they? So probably end up getting pushed to next week because of the rain. So we're actually going to start seeing some of that landscaping along the southbound lanes that we've been talking about for so long start to be installed. Storm sewer installation throughout the project. Water main relocation continues. That's a big part of what's going on out there right now. Testing of that water main. So we've got 4 phases of the water main that are being installed. Each phase will be tested. It was supposed to be scheduled for today. It's going to be pushed back to next week. It's actually a pretty big process that we have to coordinate with RWSA and ACSA and all these other groups. So that's in process. Jack and Bore 92 and 11-1. We've been hearing about this for a long time. The good news is late this week or tomorrow, it'll wrap up 11-1, start demobilizing that, and then 9-2 by the end of the month. So we're getting close to being done with the Jack and Bores and under drain installation throughout the project. Slide. So a few pictures here. I'm getting a little weird angle. So this is up near the Coles, looking south. This is North Hollymead here. All this asphalt has been demolished and the grading work, the fill placement starting here. You'll notice here that this asphalt is still in place. That's there because why tear it out over the winter time when you can just leave it in place so you don't have to worry about any loss of sediment or anything like that. But that'll be coming soon. So, and then this is looking south in a similar location on the other side of the road. You can see the fill placement and grading here. This is just south of the poles. On the right here is one of the ponds. This is the Mooney property here. You can see the towers in the background to give you a little sense of where the picture was taken from. Next slide. Nope, skip over one. This is Pond 3. I think this picture was taken late last week. Is that right?
Less than a week ago.
Okay, yeah, so down here is where the drainage is being installed. This is actually 9-2. You can't quite see it, it's just over the hill, but where they're jacking and boring at an angle across the road. As you can see here, this is a big pond. There's a lot of cut, getting into rock now, so that's a big job to install that pond that's going in right now. And then this shows you a little bit of the, I guess it's a little dark down here in this corner, but it shows you some of the water main relocation. This is down near Polo Grounds. This is a 24-inch water main. We see a tie into an existing water main here, so this is a pretty big water main to be running for 1.8 miles all the way up to town center. So there's a lot of work there. They are moving very quickly, approaching Asheville Boulevard, and next week they'll be actually going underneath Asheville Boulevard. Next slide, please. Lane closures, access to Ridgewood and Reuben Lane, coordinated with the residents. We talked a little bit about that earlier. So there's just that coordination, letting them know when work's going to be going on, so they're expecting that and can get around it. So over the next 2 weeks, continuing that erosion control maintenance, Reuben Lane excavation, trying to finish up Pond 3, at least the drainage. One other thing is that all the testing that's being done on the water mains, that water will be run through the ponds, so we need those ponds up and running, so that's a big push right now. Fine grading, continuing that fine grading on the northbound lane and shared use path, installing curb backup material, sanitary sewer installation at various locations throughout the project, asphalt demolition south of Hollymead. That's that area that we looked at just a moment ago where the asphalt is still there, or the old northbound lanes. Landscaping, phase 3 water main installation, phase 2 water main testing. The testing is going to get pushed back a week, so phase 1 will be next week, phase 2 hopefully the week following that. Jack and Moore, structure 9-2, demobilization of 11-1, and under drain installation. So the only changes with regard to anticipated lane closures is there will be beginning on the 23rd, I guess that's next Monday. Pretty much for that week, there will be nighttime closures of Ashwood in phases with a detour along North Hollymead. And that's for that water main crossing. It's a big trench. In the morning, when it's opened up for that week, there'll be steel plates similar to what we had at Rio that we recessed. So the first phase is, well, it'll be broken into entrance and exit. So for 2 nights, the entrance will be closed, and you'll have to go up to Hollymead, detour around, and then for 2 nights, the exit will be closed, and then we have another night where it's all paved and put back in place. And I think this is important because in the future, there's a lot of work that's going to have to happen in the next, say, month and a half at that intersection. And this will be a good precursor to that work, because we found that it's more effective to go in and kind of rip off the Band-Aid, so to speak, get it done and get out of there. And it's less impact on the residents. So in the next month to 6 weeks, we'll be talking about that. But I wanted everybody to be aware that we do have a little bit of a change here. This has all been coordinated by Chris and Lou with the residents in Forest Lakes. Any questions on 29 Light? Okay. Work on Berkmar Extended, erosion control maintenance. Obviously, it's always a big issue out there where we have big slopes. Fine grading and stone placement on the shared use path and sidewalk. So the vast majority of that's done on the roadway. Now it's shared use path and sidewalk, which is a good sign. Cut the filler abutment A and push the filler abutment B. That's just moving some dirt around those locations, getting it ready for approach slabs on the bridge and that section of roadway. Building and setting the bridge form liners is ongoing this week. We'll continue next week. Installing the tooth joints, you've all seen these on bridges. It's right at the ends of the bridge so the bridge can move. That's going on this week.
Dave, tell them what the form liners are going to be for.
The form liners are for the aesthetic treatment, just like we looked at some pictures of those at Rio. So it's those same kind of form liners. Those are all put together on the forms, which are constructed by out of wood generally, and then so they can kind of hop those down the bridge as they're pouring the concrete on the parapet walls and the barrier wall. So
That's at the edges of the bridge.
Sorry?
Obviously, the decking is done.
Deck is done.
Those forms are for the edges of the bridge.
Yeah, the parapet wall, which runs along the outside, and then the barrier wall between the roadway and the shared use path. Okay. Pouring sleeper pads, that's for the approach slabs, MSE coping installation, just kind of the cap on top of that MSE wall that we've seen a lot of pictures of, and basin intermediate paving. This week we did have a lot of rain, so I think we're trying to maybe look at next week, and a lot of this has to do with in January, a lot of the asphalt plants are kind of iffy on whether they're up and running or not. They do a lot of their maintenance in January, so as soon as the subcontractor, Chimon, can get out there and start paving, we're going to see asphalt on Berkmar for the first time. So that's exciting.
Want to explain what the sleeper pads are?
The sleeper pad is what the approach slab rests on. So you have a piece of concrete and rebar. That the approach slab is a concrete slab running up to the bridge, so you don't have settlement right there at the edge of the bridge.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a transition from your asphalt to your concrete surface.
Okay, you're moving the transition away from the bridge by the sleeper pad.
Yeah, I think these I think are 50-foot approach slabs. So you transition from the asphalt across the approach slabs. You don't have differentials.
I had problems at car washes with that transition too.
Yes, and that's the bump at the end of the bridge everybody always talks about. So we're trying to eliminate that.
To asphalt, yeah. Okay.
So this is a picture looking south. This is at the town center roundabout. So these guys here are starting to form up and pretty soon pour that new section of island at the roundabout to tie into that existing roundabout. You can see all the curb here and the stones down, just waiting for asphalt, really.
Now, that's Hilton Road, right?
That was at Town Center, looking south. Yes. Hilton Heights, they haven't constructed the roundabout yet, but I'll talk a little bit about that traffic control in just a moment. This is a little bit south of that location, looking north. You can see the coals and everything up in the background. So you can see here the sidewalk area is graded out. Generally, the shared use path area is graded out. It's all under stone, waiting on asphalt. All the curb and gutters in for the vast majority of the project. And this is a picture. We usually see pictures of the bridge from this side, and Lee wanted to expand his artistic creativity and go to the north side of the bridge and take a picture south. This is the area where I've mentioned the push to fill, moving the dirt. It'll happen, and we can see what the bridge looks like now. Deck's been done for a while. See form work and rebar work on the parapet wall, some rebar on the barrier wall. So all that's ongoing this week, next week, and over the next couple of weeks.
Excuse me, forgive my gap. It may be stuff that was discussed before I came on, or maybe I've just forgotten, but what is the expectation of bicycle traffic on Berkmar?
The expectation is that people will use it.
But is it a bike lane, or how is that structured?
Yeah, we have bike lanes in the shared use path.
Both use direct, and shared use on Berkmar, okay.
It's pretty much an open facility as far as multimodal transportation.
Okay.
I mean,
I assumed there was, I just wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so it's not really a lane closure, but we did have a reconfiguration of the intersection at Berkmar and Hilton Heights, where this is our phase 1 MOT, so it's always been planned, where we had a kind of confusing stop condition there, where the folks on Hilton Heights would stop, but the folks traveling north on Berkmar, if you were going through, you didn't have to stop, or you could make a right. So that's all kind of been condensed down now, and I think it's a safer situation. It's a 3-way stop. So that's phase 1. The next phase will just kind of move everybody over a little bit to construct another portion of the roundabout and the utilities. And then in the relatively near future, the access to Sam's Club will be closed off. That's all planned. It's all been coordinated with Sam's Club. They're aware of it. And then eventually the entire roundabout will be constructed.
So that's what generated the comment from some citizens
Three-way stop.
about adding a sign that says three-way stop in advance of each stop sign.
Yes. Well, generally, what we would do is have a little placard on the stop sign that says three-way stop. So
Well, do we have that?
You do not.
Would it be worth adding a little placard?
I'm sure we could do that.
Why don't we add the placard?
I mean, I don't think we need another sign.
I don't think we need another sign, but adding the
Stop
placard
the
to
other
make
people.
everybody aware that it's a three-way stop for a handful of months.
Because up until now, it hasn't been. So it's a little change there. And we haven't seen any problems, but there's no reason that we can't.
Let's add the placard.
Joel probably has his back.
Yeah, we'll find a placard.
There's some in a warehouse.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, there's a box,
Okay.
a bunch of flags.
Lots of them, yeah.
Kind of like the can, and somewhere with the label on it, was hanging on.
The three-way stop. So that's,
Henry.
Let me make sure I understand it.
yes,
You're building a roundabout,
yes,
Hilton Heights and Berkmar.
yes.
You don't need to close the traffic there.
No.
Half at a time.
Somewhere else, we're building a roundabout and we have to close the traffic. Interesting.
I'm not sure of the other project, but I know that.
He's talking about Hillsdale.
I know where he's talking
It's a different situation.
Well, I don't know. It's,
We have an existing road to work with where we're able to move them back and forth and build a piece at a time. The way the project was designed also is the majority of the roundabout is actually outside of where the existing, it's kind of an offset roundabout, if you will. So it's kind of out of the existing roadway. If it were smack dab in the middle.
your case is easier, is what you said.
Yes.
Potentially. I haven't really compared the two.
Okay. You guys do a good job.
Thank you. Does everybody understand that change? It's a subtle change, it's not a big change, but it's important. Over the next 2 weeks, continuing grading the shared use path and sidewalk, cut the fill at abutment B on the north side of the river, building and setting the bridge form liners, abutment A, tooth joint installation, so they're doing B first and moving over to A. Abutment A is on the south side of the river, so working on north and move to the south. Basin intermediate paving, as we talked about. Landscaping will start next week on Berkmar. So we'll start not only on 29 Lyman, but we'll start seeing that landscaping getting installed on Berkmar as well. Storm sewer installation, water main installation. We do have a betterment. Lane Foreman worked with RWSA to get a section of water main on the very north end that will be for future use. And tying steel for the approach slab and the parapet wall tie-ins to the terminal walls. Any other questions on Berkmar?
I just want to make sure we have a name beside the person accountable for adding the three-way stop placard.
A name? Joel Denunzio.
Is that Joel?
I'm working on an email to see if I have them stopped right now.
Okay, well, let's get that done. Okay, and then Lou, you can update
Let it.
the person who made that comment. Say, hey, we're not going to do a new sign, but we're adding the placard.
A couple of sign companies in town that make you one real quick too, if you don't have.
We'll get it, okay. But that's Joel's.
No, I
Joel's
guess that's my name. I was just joking. We'll work together.
Everybody's against you, Joe.
It's because he wore the suit.
He's a good sport.
It can just be one name.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Jeanette, can you talk about Hillsdale?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So, work this week, we're continuing to work on the retaining wall. So we're excavating between Pepsi and the post office. We're forming the leveling pad. We're almost complete with it. But we've also started placing the panels, and you'll see a picture of that shortly. And then, of course, backfilling to make sure that it's stable. We are also placing curbs south of India Road and connecting the Pepsi parking lot with the Pepsi office building and improving access over there. And we are placing stormwater pipe by Hampton Inn going south along Hillsdale. That's a critical path item. We are forming the wing walls for abutment A, which is the northern abutment. That should be complete today. If the weather is good tomorrow, we can pour. If not, it will go until next week. There are no significant lane closures, a little flagging that's associated with the stormwater work. And this is the retaining wall over here. So it's a T-wall system. So the segment actually looks like a T. And then you fill, you compact, and we are only, I believe, putting up 2 units for that wall.
What building is that? What building is that?
That's the Pepsi bottling plant. And that is the northern abutment for the bridge as well. And this is the curbing that we've installed along Homewood, and we are working on the other side today, getting ready for paving, so that would be nice. And then this is the reconstructed building. They painted this one to match the existing color, and all of the scaffolding is down now, and they're working on the last little bit of the exterior of that. So, next slide. So the next 2 weeks, we're going to continue and hopefully finish the retaining wall between Pepsi and the post office. We are going to excavate next week India and Hillsdale Drive intersection so we can start tying in, and we're going to be doing that under flagging. We are continuing to place stormwater pipes and structures. We will start going from Hampton Inn and actually traveling north to where the roundabout will be. And the wing walls, again, we're forming them today. If we can't pour tomorrow, then we'll pour next week. And we're also going to be undercutting and filling the stormwater management basin that's existing in preparation for the new roadway. So we will have flagging at India and Hillsdale intersection next week.
Back up one, Linda. Jeanette, did you want to talk about the incentive?
Yes. So we met with Fielder's Choice.
Just a little bit of background. I think it was Henry that first brought up when we talked about the roundabout and the need to have some closures there of local roads, about whether or not we could do that without closing any roads. The plan still is to have some road closures. There was not an incentive clause in the Hillsdale contract. And we went back and looked at some sources of scraping up some money to add an incentive to the contract, both in terms of the roundabout as well as finishing, well, the roundabout and finishing on time, and then a second piece of that, or finishing early.
Correct. So the first part is the roundabout. We're trying to get that construction down to 1 month. We were thinking 2 months. That's what the schedule shows. That's what we anticipated. So that would be $150,000 if they're able to construct it in a month. And then it's prorated back to 2 months to 0. But they must complete the roundabout a month early and complete on time in order for that to work.
Yeah, right. So that's important. So complete the roundabout 30 days, in 30 days instead of 60, and finish.
So when the project is done, they get their bonus.
And finish. But there's a second little kicker.
Well, there's a second little kicker of $200,000 if they're able to finish up to a month early. And then again, it's prorated back to the fixed completion date of October 30th, 2007.
So if they finished the roundabout in 30 days and finished by September 30th, it would be $350,000.
And they sign a claim waiver.
And they sign a claim.
Yes.
So the bottom line of that is we've done our part.
Right.
I mean, I think we've done our part to find the money, to make the opportunity for the incentive there. And
We've seen incentives work well.
we'll see. You know, it's not the number that's on that check, but you know, it's not $160-some million worth of, or $120 million worth of work. It's what, 11 million is your contract?
Yeah,
11 and some change. So
I'll take that check if it's available.
I would be. I probably would be missing this meeting and be out there. So anyway, that's what we've been able to do. And Jeanette and the VDOT folks have been working on putting that language together, which would actually be a change order in the contract, but would only pay out unless the term, with the terms.
Now, when do you expect to close the road?
Well, and that's one of the things that the contractor's looking at is that, okay, if we want to try and make that incentive, maybe we push the roundabout closure a little further back into better weather. So we're still waiting to hear from them when they're proposing to do that. And then we're going to circle back around with all the businesses and let them know, included in our monthly updates, change the webpage, the whole bit.
Now, also, before you close the road, if I remember correctly, you will have built the hillside extension at Whole Foods to go around the motel, right?
Correct.
The hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And how far are you with that?
Well, that's the section that we were placing the curb on, so we have to pave. We were hoping end of this month, mid-February.
Why don't you go back to that picture, Linda, back to the,
Okay.
one more.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
this one
okay.
right here.
At one time, you were thinking about completing that by the end of 2016, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you're pushing back.
Yes, yes. The contractor rejiggered his work. This is not on the critical path, so we're still on schedule. They're just rearranging some work.
Okay. And when do you think they'll have that done?
That's what we're hoping by the end of this month, mid-February.
Okay.
Do we have a sense of, I mean, you've mentioned the communications with the businesses there regarding the road closures. Do we have a sense of how things are going
Just overall?
thus far with regard to the businesses specifically?
Overall?
Yeah.
Not just the detour.
Well, I mean,
So-
since the project kind of broke ground,
Mhm.
what feedback are you getting from
Well, we've been working with the property owner, certainly as we're impacting them, but also in preparation. So like the senior center, we made sure that was going well because that's a big conduit for information for the community. So we've been working individually. We recently had a complaint with one of the relocated tenants in the Seminole Square Shopping Center that we talked with the contractor of trying to dampen the noise or what have you for that business.
So there is a conduit for communication
Absolutely.
that is open and.
Yeah, we kind of introduced ourselves around because
Imagine
they could find us too. So yes, exactly, handed out business cards, let them know, please contact the inspector first, it will eventually get to me. Exactly.
Jeanette, yes. The talk about the senior center reminded me, I don't go that way very often, but I was up there the other day, and the pond that's across Greenbrier, I guess, from the senior center, it's all fenced in?
Yes,
And
well, to a degree, it's not
Okay.
completely.
But all the geese were sitting in the grass on the other side of the road. Are they, I mean, is there an issue that the geese are just kind of wandering all over the senior center because they've been expelled from the pond, or is that?
We haven't heard that.
Okay.
They do tend to move.
I know, and that's why I was wondering if they
Yeah.
were stuck there, if they had a place to go back to.
Ideally, they would go to the next stormwater pond over, which is on the other side of the Cars building. So we have a basin here, but there's actually a basin right over there. So I'd like to relocate them there, but they haven't.
We'll
We
talk
put
to
up a
them.
sign.
Exactly.
Signing goose.
Well,
Get a couple of collies out there.
Greenbrier at that point has been famous for goose.
Goose hits.
He's crossing the
Yes.
street in traffic.
That's why I was asking if they're,
It's kind of
if they're kind
almost
of
like
displaced and wandering.
the old Copenhagen promotional.
Yes.
poster. Very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Kristen, not to, I mean, your comment is actually fairly valid because it's been brought to my attention that geese, I guess, revisit their grounds, I
They
guess.
develop habits and
Yeah.
them, yeah.
And the pond's going to be moved to the eastern side of Hillsdale, which means that they're going to be crossing
Yeah.
now a busy
Two roads,
road frequently. So I don't know if that's something that,
A little goose overpass.
Well, we were actually going to install fencing within the basin to prevent the geese from actually being able to access the pond. So they're going to have to move.
yeah.
So, and that was in response.
Someone might want to tell them that, but.
Fly in.
Well,
But
that was
I don't know
the-
if that's going to present a hazard in the future or not, but it's,
Goose behavior is probably important for that project.
I don't know. I don't know much about
I don't either.
behavior, but it
I know
might
enough
be.
to catch them because I do this wildlife.
As Henry's pointed out, it's a problem on Greenbrier.
Yeah.
This problem now might be on Hillsdale, where it's going to be 15,000 cars a day at least going up now.
Okay. Okay, I don't know, but we'll.
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, we can
Chat
wait to
about
see what
that
happens.
further.
I mean,
Yeah, well,
Build a special
may not be.
Yeah. If only things like that actually worked.
Some places they do work, but I don't know if they would work.
In terms of the budget, really the last month, another 3.1 invoiced on the design build projects, Rio, Route 29 widening, Berkmar, and about 640,000 invoiced on Hillsdale. Dave has been keeping tally of the design build projects, and I keep putting it off one month. But we'll have that on a separate little sheet next month. Those projects are really going to, from all expectation, they're really going to finish up nice in terms of under budget, which is something that's always real important to me, and it should be important. You want it to finish right. You want to spend the money that needs to be spent to do the job right, and not 50 cents more than that. And Dave's been keeping a close eye on that. And obviously, that speaks well for the contractor team as well. So we'll pop that up on a little separate sheet for you next time. But in terms of budget, that's all. The Best Buy ramp, 250-29 interchange, still has to settle out as that project goes through all the closeout phases. At some point in time, well, no, maybe it is settled out.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Yeah, I guess it is, isn't it?
What's the story there? You have $827,000 in the red, meaning that
Well,
the
it's
project is running that much under, or what is it?
no, it's not that. It's actually not that much, because a negative value in the remaining CV is over contract value. So the contract value needs to be adjusted as the project closes out for the change orders and a few other things there.
It looks like you're anticipating negative change orders. The contractor is reimbursing you.
No, that's not the situation here.
No, that's what
That's
it
not
looks
the
like.
situation here.
I don't know. Maybe if I studied it, I would understand.
Well, if the remaining money in your pocket is in parentheses, it means not only do you not have any, but you owe somebody something.
Well, no.
We'll get that figured out.
Because take the 20 million up front, that's remaining contract value. That's money I'm going to spend if I was the owner of the project.
Oh, wait a minute, you're looking at I'm sorry, you're looking at that.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
No, one below. No,
One
no.
under
The one
one,
you're coming.
This doesn't have anything to do with that.
No, but the concept would be similar. The
That's
20,000 is money I need to have in the bank because
Yeah.
I'm going to have to pay the guy.
Right.
That one looks to me like the guy is going to give me 827,000.
Because they have. Look at how much has been invoiced. So it's the contract value that needs to be adjusted.
Okay.
Okay?
I started-
It's all square.
I'm sure it is.
There's no shenanigans.
I'm
No
just trying to
And it's
understand.
still less than the original allocation.
What the concept is here. Okay. I think I may understand it if I study it more.
All right, we've been keeping track of these accidents in the post-opening period. And the last time we met, we looked at them through August, and now Joel has them updated through the end of October. So it's still the period after the opening. It's still a 5-year history, but now we have some additional data for 2 more months.
Yep, so we're seeing additional data from September and October on here. That's what was available at the time that I put these together, and you can see the total count is 22 in 2012, 38, 25, 32, and then the last line is since the opening of the intersection
dramatic.
up there. Excuse me?
It's half.
Yeah, and it's still early to look at it. Hopefully we will, part of this project is safety related, so in addition to capacity, so we would hope to see reduction of crashes.
Do we know, is there anything about seriousness of crashes, like if anyone was injured or anything like that?
I have that data, and I can give that to
For
you.
the next time, when you're doing the longer period, that might be really useful, because fender benders are great to get rid of, but the actual things that are keeping people safe, these are really worth knowing.
Yeah, we'll
As
put
soon
that
as
on
it's
here.
Jill, can you remind us of the area that you're examining?
Yeah, this area is the construction limits of the project from 29th Place, and you'll see a couple outside. Those are within 150 feet, which were related to the intersections, up to Woodbrook Drive, and within 150 feet there also. So this is the data from 2012, just so we had our 5-year period. And where's the laser on this? There we go. I wanted to point out a couple things. There's a couple unusual things that I don't know if you have questions about or not, but we have a side swipe opposite direction, which is kind of unusual to see in this, and I'll just tell you that's right here, that red dot. I made all the side swipes red because I'm not that good with the computer to not make them red, quite honestly. But they don't. It doesn't distinguish between opposite and same direction on the side swipes in the GIS. So that's this one right here. The crash actually happened. Someone was making a U-turn here, and someone was turning right there, and they came together. I don't know if that technically is an opposite direction side swipe, but it was not a serious accident. So I wanted to point that out on this slide. And you'll see when we get into October, we start to see some deer crashes.
How many of those are deer crashes?
There's just one deer crash, and that one, I think it's right there. The yellow under the green there. It's harder to see on this. Yeah, there's a yellow dot right under the green there. If you look at your print, it should be a little clearer.
Yeah.
And on the computer, if you had this on the PDF on the computer, you can zoom in and see everything real quick, because a lot of these dots do tend to overlap each other. Next slide here, you'll see here we had a pedestrian crash down here. There was a pedestrian crossing from east to west. It actually, the 29 northbound traffic was stopped. They were crossing this way, the light turned green, and the car took off and hit the pedestrian. The pedestrian was taken to the hospital. It wasn't serious. They did make a statement to the police after the fact. They didn't have enough time to cross the intersection. Hopefully we'll see a lot less of that we have a pedestrian crossing at Rye Road now. You'll see a non-collision right here. That was this dot right there. That's a motorcycle crash. They didn't crash into anybody. He hit the brakes too hard and flipped himself over the motorcycle. So that was not serious either. You'll see the deer here also. You'll see an other right here.
It's pretty serious.
He wasn't seriously hurt.
Speaking as a motorcycle.
Certainly to his dignity.
Okay, so the other here was up. That's the other right there.
But Joe, you're going through the years now, right?
Yeah, this is 2014. I'm just pointing out you're going to see some additional things on here that we haven't seen before for this data. So I just want to, if we usually get questions about the things that don't look normal, if it's not a rear end angle or side swipe. So this was someone ran a red light and T-boned another car. You'll see another deer collision there, and you'll see a head-on. The head-on is down right at the intersection there. That was someone fell asleep and crossed the median of the road. Going to 2015, there was actually nothing unusual about 2015 as far as crashes.
This would have been during nighttime.
This is during nighttime construction.
So the steel plates are out.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Total of 32 crashes. And you'll see in the middle there's a lot of angle collisions that are overlapping each other. So if you try and count all the dots, it's very difficult. But they are all there. I verify that.
But there were more at the intersection.
There were more at the intersection, angle crashes, yes. And so this is post-construction. So I'll point out we have 2 additional months of data here. So I'll just go over the new data that we saw. This point right here is new data, and that was someone making a lane change from the right lane, from the inner right lane to the outer right lane, and they just they just sideswiped somebody. We had this collision right here. Someone was coming out of the southernmost speedway entrance. They tried to cross the entire road into the through lanes of Route 29. The police report said that when they questioned the driver, he was there was something not quite right, and they took him in for medical examination. So they think that was actually a medical condition that driver had pulling out of there. This green dot up here is new. That was a hit-and-run DUI. And then you have two new angle collisions up here. One of them is one of those situations where someone was taking a U-turn from the rightmost left turn lane. We've seen that a couple times.
Yeah.
And they cut off the other car. And the other one was somebody turning left into Woodbrook and someone turning right into Woodbrook also. And the person taking a right on red hit the other car. So nothing too unusual out here. It's looking good that the crashes are down, and we hope to see that continue.
Are we still watching the queuing in the left turn lane, northbound left turn lane at Woodbrook?
Yes, we are. We're not seeing any excessive queuing there. Oh, at Woodbrook, I'm sorry. I was thinking Ryan.
Two rear-end collisions.
We have been looking at the northbound left turns, and it seems like the adjustments that were made to the green time on the signals during those peak hours has helped to alleviate queuing outside of the storage of the turn lane. It does fill up, but then there's enough green time for it to generally flush out completely. But there is still some work that's going on Woodbrook, correct? That
Yeah,
the TOC is.
that's still out to a consultant to look if we can unsplit that signal.
Yeah, that's
yesterday.
the signal at the
We haven't
entrance.
received
Do they have a schedule for finishing?
Not at this point, not until they receive it from the consultant. And
Well, I mean, do they have a schedule for, can they tell the consultant they need to finish so we can see what the result is?
I think the answer should be yes.
Or that, okay.
I think that one other thing that I've seen on occasion, this is just anecdotally, because I'm through that all the time, but, and you're right, the queuing seems to have gotten better. When this first opened up, the stacking was consistently back into the through lanes, and I haven't seen much of that. But the left turn that doesn't make the U-turn, but actually goes up Woodbrook, the signal getting into Kroger can back up down and actually.
And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
They're working.
so the
That's
two
what
together.
they're looking at, and that is causing quite an issue with coordinating those two signals.
Right.
That's the limiting factor right now. So even if we wanted to add more green time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's what they're working on.
Yeah, because everybody wants to get in the leftmost left turn lane so they can take a left into that.
Cheap Kroger gas.
Well, and then you got the guy in the left turn lane that wants to go to Lowe's, and he wants to get across everybody, and the two work. You're right. Looking at them together,
There has been some work done out there to try and help that.
Yeah.
There's steps being taken
Sure.
to try and improve that.
Okay.
I guess, it's as efficient as it can be under the existing configuration.
Yeah, those are very close signals. They are difficult.
Bill, you have the two side swipes right in front of Elmer Square there.
Yeah. Those were previous, we had discussed those before, and those were people coming through the intersection.
Well, there's a continuous right turn. I take that once a week, and I'm always a little bit nervous, and I feel best when I know that the traffic light is red. So that when I make the turn, I know there's nobody coming. Because
Can you recap what those were?
Yeah, one of them was a hit and run, someone turning into Albemarle Square, taking a right in, and someone hit him in the back and they took off. And the other one was two vehicles actually going through the intersection, not taking a right from Rio to 29, and they just had a side swipe.
And one of those was a truck, correct? They veered out of the lane. I thought that was the truck was involved in that.
I don't remember it. I have all the crash reports there. I can look at it.
I do it once a week. I'm getting better and better.
The hit and
and
run
not
sounds
being-
like what you're worried about, that you're slowing down and somebody behind you is planning to keep going. and they-
Well, I have to get out of the lane so that I can continue on. And I'm always afraid
Oh,
that
it's
somebody's
getting
coming
across, yeah.
across from Ryo, but on the local lanes, trying to maybe get into the shopping center.
Right.
So it's always,
We have not, that's what we've been looking for, and we haven't seen that yet.
if they have a red line, then I know nobody's coming except if somebody's making a U-turn. But if they don't have a red line, I really have to be careful. And now I have to really cross 2 lanes because you also have changed on the widening, you have changed the way the lanes work. At one time, if you were on the totally inner lane, it would merge and you wanted to be on, if you count the lanes from the median out, you want to be on lane 2. Now I want to be on lane 1. So I have an extra incentive to cross 2 lanes.
Well, we are, that's what I'm keeping an eye on when I look at these reports to see if we're seeing issues from the either diverging or converging the traffic at this situation. So far, all we've seen is the one here, which appears to be someone that's doing something they shouldn't have been doing. So, but I'll continue to keep.
You've kind of
looking at
got
it.
a rhythm now to keeping this up.
Yeah,
keeping
yeah.
this
I'm
data.
keeping. I do have all the crash reports. I don't think
Yeah.
I'm going to go through all of them, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
Well, it's good to know. I think Kristen asked for sort of a
Injuries.
Kind of
You want to know how serious these crashes are.
Yeah.
Just like, the kind of in the numbers, like, 16 crashes, 2 with injuries. Or
You did that once. You
Yeah,
you
we
had
have done
it.
that
Yeah.
previously. We kind
Yeah.
of simplified this
Yeah.
a little bit, but I can
We don't need that often, but
back
just
in.
now that you're getting
Yeah.
this long,
I can put them right on the
5-year
spreadsheet.
data, it'd be
Yeah.
nice to see that over 5
Yeah,
years.
that'd be perfect.
I think the good news are that in the previous 4 years, it averaged about 27 crashes a year, and so far this year, you've been down to 16, which is like a 40% reduction. So,
Yeah, I've been keeping a spreadsheet of the crashes per month because I also want to see if certain months tend to have higher crashes. I've been keeping, so far with the new configuration, our average per month is always below the average in the past 5 years. So it's looking good that way so far.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. I actually have one item of new business. Our next meeting is scheduled for February the 16th, and this room is booked for an important conference, a research conference on February the 16th. And remember, initially we had the second Tuesday, so they booked this conference for the Thursday. So this conference was booked for the third Thursday, and it's not one that can be moved, and I respect that. I respect that. So we either need to boogie to a different date or figure out a different place to meet in February.
I nominate Chip's office. Many of us will be there already.
On the third?
16th.
Oh, the 16th, yeah. Isn't it February the 16th? I've got that right, Don. Because I've said the wrong date more times than I can count.
This is Thursday.
Yeah, the 16th. Could we do it at your place, Chip? Can we stream it?
Yeah, he's got equipment.
You've got your.
We learned from you.
Yeah.
He's got some good.
You sure we can do it February 16th at your place?
I gotta make sure nobody's already in there, but I doubt it.
Okay.
I can know first thing in the morning.
Okay. So we'll tentatively plan to meet at the MPO on the 16th. And poor Rudy can know that I kept my word and said we'd get out of here.
Which is the Water Street Center for people listening and watching.
At the MPO at the Water Street Center. Okay, I'll circle back to you in the morning.
Chip, what's the address of that, just in case people?
407 East Water.
407?
407 East Water Street is the address, and what we're talking about for anybody watching is the February 16th meeting of the panel. We'd still meet at 2 p.m. We'll confirm that tomorrow. Once we confirm it, we'll put it on the website and make sure everybody is aware. Okay, sorry for the slip there. All right, that sounds good. Henry, any new business or wrap up?
Walk over to his place.
There you go.
That's it.
Chris?
Nope.
Brad?
Nope.
Kristen?
Okay, thank you.
Mark? Morgan? Chip? Pete? Thank you very much. Thanks. Peace out.